And we are at the Cannabis Science Conference today. We're talking about cannabis. And I'm joined with Maggie Favre, who is the Mid-Atlantic Operations Manager at CannaCare. Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm okay. So thank you for joining us today. Tell me a little bit about CannaCare and your role there and what brings you to the conference today.
Yeah, so CannaCare is a medical evaluation facility where we're specialists in cannabis medicine. And what that means is that we're really able to help patients through their journey with cannabis. There's a lot of misinformation out there about cannabis, and a lot of it is really unknown. So for a patient to be able to eliminate the pharmaceuticals that they might have been using and other therapies that just really haven't been very effective for them, they need to understand cannabis as a medicine to really be able to get the most benefits out of it. It's not the the cannabis of the 70s. It really is a mainstream product at this point. That it's not something that you just smoke. It comes in many different forms to use.
Okay.
It comes from topicals to tinctures to they have transdermal patches. They make capsules. So the traditional ways that people are used to taking their medicine, they're able to use cannabis in those ways now. But there are a lot of differences in the different strains of cannabis and how they affect different people and different medical conditions.
Such as, if you don't mind?
Oh, absolutely. So someone who has anxiety, there are certain strains that actually might increase that anxiety level. So if they're not aware of that information, they might have a very unpleasant experience with cannabis. They might think that it's not for them and isn't going to be helpful to them, and then give up. And we don't want people to have trial and error. We want them to have trial and success.
Okay.
So we like to arm them with that type of information.
Now, I want to ask you about the difference between hemp and cannabis.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. But let me ask, when people come to you, why do they come to you?
They come to us seeking help.
Okay.
They want the quality of life back that they used to have. The medical conditions that they've been suffering from really are debilitating, and they really affect the quality of life. And people just want to enjoy life. That's what it's about.
So you're like the first stop, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about the journey from medical condition, possibly, to getting the help that you need through a company like CannaCare.
Yeah, so it's pretty standard that you would expect in any medical office. You come in, you might bring a medical record. You're going to fill out your history so that we know what therapies you've tried in the past, so that we know how to most effectively help you in the future. You're going to meet with our education counselor, where we do a one-on-one session and we really teach about cannabis as a medicine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
And then after that, they meet with our provider, who does a problem-focused exam and determines if cannabis might be appropriate for them. If they determine it is, they write the medical recommendation to use medical cannabis, and we register them into the state's program so that they can access the dispensaries.
Now, you guys have a lot of different locations. You have one in Maryland. Tell us a little bit about how big you are, so that if somebody who is not here in the Maryland area wants to reach out to you, where are you located? Where areas are you in?
We do like to help as many patients as we possibly can. So we're in Maryland, we're in Delaware, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
We're headquartered out of Massachusetts. So one of the things that brings with it is that in Massachusetts they've had a legal program for 6 years now. So we have a lot of experience behind us, and we have a lot of patients that we've been able to really get insight about the different things that are really helping patients in an actual real world, clinical environment.
Okay.
We're in Maine and Chicago. We're located throughout the country.
Might need one in Chicago, but that's another whole story. But I think even in Maine, places where I'm guessing, might least expect to have such a large interest in it. It seems that those are some of the higher areas. I'm not really sure why that is, but there's a medical doctor we're going to talk to a little bit later who's going to explain. Sometimes it could be related to where you live or whatever. I don't know. What do you think? Is there any truth to anything like that?
It's very state specific. So every single program is completely different from each other.
Okay.
So each regulatory body makes their own framework of laws, and then we have to follow those rules and guidelines. So every state we operate slightly different to make sure that we're being compliant with the laws.
Let's talk a little bit about the government and the laws, because they have a patent on something that deals with the cannabis industry.
Yeah,
could you
great question.
Okay.
So the government has a patent on cannabis as a neuroprotectant and an antioxidant. So the government is very aware that it does not cause brain damage. It actually repairs your brain.
Okay, I'm sorry. Would you mind saying that again?
Cannabis repairs your brain. It is a neuroprotectant. It heals your brain. Mm-hmm. It's exciting.
The government, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna move it along. Okay.
But there's no medicinal benefits though in some states.
Okay.
Imagine that.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Well, you are such a wealth of information and knowledge. I'm going to test your knowledge right now.
Oh, okay. That's right.
Terpenoids and flavonoids. Would you tell us the difference between those two?
So,
tell me. I really have no clue what those things mean, but I'd like to learn. Yeah.
Yeah, so they are naturally occurring in most plants, not just cannabis.
Okay.
They're the essential oils of the plant, what's associated with the aroma and the taste. And what the best way I know how to describe a terpene so that somebody kind of gets what I'm talking about. When you have a tangerine and you peel it back, you know that smell you smell.
Right.
That's the tangerine's terpenes.
Okay.
And all plants have these terpenes. Some you smell more than others, but those are the smells that are associated with cannabis. And then the flavonoids are the tastes that are associated with cannabis. And we found that the terpenes and the flavonoids play a very integral role in how the different strains affect different people in different conditions. It's interesting to note that those natural parts of the plant are made to protect the plant. So they also are some of the parts that are protecting and healing our bodies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Lastly, hemp versus cannabis. Some people think they're the same thing. Are they or no?
There are a lot of similarities,
okay,
and they come from the same plant genus. However, hemp is defined as a cannabis plant that is less than 3% THC. And so that's the definition of it. But what the main differences are is hemp is an industrial plant. It's great for making fibers and a lot of biofuels and building products. It's a very industrial crop.
Wow.
And cannabis is a very medicinal plant. It's going to be more concentrated in the cannabinoids, in the terpenes and the flavonoids that are what brings the healing to people. So there are some of those ingredients in hemp as well, but they're usually at a lower percentage rate than they would be in cannabis. So ideally, they serve two different purposes. But there are a lot of states that don't have medical laws.
Okay.
So hemp is rich in CBD. And CBD is one of the cannabinoids that
that
has
word again.
a lot of medicinal benefits.
I've definitely got to come back and talk to you. You have so many questions and okay, I'm sorry, go on. CBD, okay.
Yeah. So CBD is really known for its anti-inflammatory properties. And the root of most disease conditions is inflammation. So if you're able to calm that inflammation down, you're not just putting a Band-Aid on your problem, you're actually helping the root cause of your condition. So the CBD is definitely beneficial for patients. It's better if they have the entourage effect and use the medicinal cannabis plant. But in states where that's not allowed, at least it's something for patients to use because it definitely has a lot of medicinal benefits.
Oh, wow. I could sit here and talk to you and listen to you all day. I can't because we got to move on to other people.
Very interesting people here.
Yeah, really. Oh my gosh. So, but I know And I just want to say thank you to Debbie and Gina, who work with Maggie, and they absolutely love her, and I understand why. They're right. She's very knowledgeable. She knows a lot. If people want to reach out to you and find out how they can connect with CannaCare Docs, how do they do that?
So they can reach us at our website, which is cannacaredocs.com, and they can always send us an email. That's md@cannacaredocs.com. And if you want to reach us via the telephone, it's 410-412-3470. We look forward to talking to you.
Oh gosh, Maggie Favre,
It was a pleasure.
Mid-Atlantic Operations Manager. It's an inside joke, you had to be there. Thank you for joining us. Okay guys, stay tuned and we will be back with more from the Cannabis Science Conference. Hi, and welcome back to It's Janice. I'm your host, Janice McLean-Deloach. We are at the Cannabis Science Conference in Baltimore at the Convention Center. We are a show that's about everything entrepreneur, small business, innovation, and creation. And so today, we're talking about the cannabis industry. I want to introduce you to our next guest. His name is Mr. Bob Clifford, who is with Shimatsu. Hi, Bob.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So let's talk a little bit about your company and how you became involved with the Cannabis Science Conference here today.
Sure. It was about 6 or 7 years ago. We had a sales guy on the West Coast, and he said, number one salesman, Paul Winkler, and he came out and he said, you need to come out here. We're on the East Coast and marketing managers. And I said, why? And he said, I'm selling all this product, instrumentation for analysis of chemical analysis, and you have to see what I'm doing. And so he took us to grow facility, cultivation facilities. He took us to dispensaries. He took us to laboratories, biomedical farms. And I got to see, there was one guy there named Ken Kovash who had this biomedical farm. And as you walked by, each plant it had a name on it. And I asked, what's the purpose of that name? Okay. And he said, oh, this is a special plant for each child with each medical condition. And so It was like, wow. And that whole thing really fits in with Shimatsu's corporate philosophy of helping mankind and Earth through research and technology. And I think the cannabis fits in that market.
Okay. All right. So could you specifically tell us what you're doing now to advance the causes of cannabis and medicine together?
Sure. I mean, I've done presentations on Capitol Hill. The biggest thing about cannabis is the testing. So one of the biggest problems, let me rephrase that. One of the testing problems is, so people want to be able to take a dosage and they need to know how much they're getting. Mm-hmm. So they don't want to take too much. So if you just say, here's a plot of cannabis, is this going to help you? I don't know. Am I going to get too high that I don't feel well? How much dosage I want to take? Okay. And there's certain terpenes in there, and that would be potency. There's certain terpenes in there. And with the terpenes, what you want to be able to do is there's synergistic effect between the terpenes and the potency. And they've been reported to have all kinds of synergistic effects depending on the ratio of those two, the cannabinoids, THC, CBD, CBG, CBN, and different terpenes. And if you're not familiar with terpenes, if you've ever been to a pine forest, pinene is a bronchial dilator. You walk in and it's, oh, wow, and it's supposed to, so things like lavender, if you've ever smelled lavender, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It has a terpene in there called linalool. And it acts as an anti-sedative and is reported to have anti-cancer properties. Limonene, where do you think else you can get that is lemons and limes. It's been reported to have antibacterial, anti-cancer, anti-depression, antifungal properties. Mm-hmm. So all of these, and then you're going to look at a bunch of contaminants because most of these patients are taking this from the medical point because they have some kind of medical condition and we don't want to poison them. So you see pesticides and residual solvents and mycotoxins and aflatoxins. I've worked previously in my life as I worked for a federal government.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what's your background?
Yeah, I have a PhD in chemistry.
Okay.
I've worked for federal agencies in the food industry. I've worked for private companies in the food, one of the largest manufacturers in the food company. And so we do test all of these things. And so why should cannabis be any different?
Okay.
And especially if the patient is going to be somebody who may be sick. And so we really need extra testing on them.
Okay, all right. And then lastly, I see that you deliver instruments. What
Correct.
specifically is the instrument that you're delivering?
So in the instruments, there's different instruments depending on the type of analysis.
Okay.
So there's HPLC, high performance liquid chromatography, that we'll use for the potency. That's the different cannabinoids,
Okay.
THC, CBD, CBN. For pesticide screening.
You say that's so fast. What's CBD, CBN?
Okay.
What, yeah.
There's
I'm sorry. I'm a little.
Yeah.
You know, I'm learning.
Sorry. So there's a number of different cannabinoids. Tetrahydrocannab. See, I don't even say them. I just go by the CBD. So they're all the different
Acronyms
for the different cannabinoids. So in pesticides, you use a different instrument. You use a liquid chromatography mass spectrometer, LC-MS.
Okay.
For fungicides, you could use same thing.
Okay.
For solvents, you will use a gas chromatograph or a gas chromatograph
Wow.
mass spec. For heavy metals, you might use an ICP mass spec, inductively coupled plasma mass spec. So we know plants specifically pull heavy metals in. For instance, if you heard of the Chernobyl nuclear accident,
Right.
they planted hemp around the facility to pull in the radioactive strontium and cesium and plutonium. So they took it from being spread out to an isolated area.
Okay.
So plants do the same thing, and they're going to get heavy metals, such as cadmium, mercury, lead, chromium, and things like that. So
Okay.
you need to test for those things. And they all have different medical conditions that they'll
And
call.
you're the guys who are the instruments, and you're the testing instrument experts, and you're going to help us move that forward.
Right. So we're going to help the laboratories set it up and be able to test that.
All right, Bob, thank you
Thank
for your
you.
time. If people want to follow you or get in touch, how do they do that?
I can be reached at R.H. Clifford, CLIFFORD, at Shimadzu, SHIMADZU.com.
Okay. All right, guys, stay tuned, and we'll be back with more from our Cannabis Science Conference. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to It's Janice. That's me, your host, Janice McLean Deloach. And so, again, we are continuing in our segment on the cannabis science medical marijuana industry. And so, joined with us today are Marvin Washington and Riley Coate. Hi, guys.
Hello, how are you?
How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. Thank you for joining us. Let's talk a little bit about why you guys are here and how you became involved with this conference and your movement, if you don't mind. Who would like to go first?
Riley can go first.
Okay.
Sure. Well, my experience of playing professional hockey and just the daily grind of, performance and recovery, I realized there needed to be an alternative to the traditional protocols of healing. And cannabis, cannabinoid therapies land up being the solution for, arguably the opioid crisis and a lot of the substance abuse that you see in sports and in the real world. So naturally, it seemed like a fit to be on the right side of history and support a solution that is sustainable and using the sports platform to normalize the message.
Okay. Thank you. Marvin?
Basically the same reason. Number one, spreading the word, because as I tell people all the time, it's like when we come to these conferences, us cannabis professionals know about all the science and the medicinal benefits of the plant, but there might be somebody in the audience that don't, and they're coming here to gather information. So that's why I'm here, that's why I'm speaking about my experience and about the NFL, what their issue is and how they need to have this plant as an alternative to what they're feeding the players now.
That's interesting that you mentioned that point. I actually just did a dinner with football players, and they were all talking about, well, they weren't all talking about it, but some of the conversation was, we get fined if we're using drugs, but we need the drugs to help us, like you said, recovery, to recover. So what's your take on that? I'll start with Marvin, and then we'll come to you, Riley.
Well, I think the NFL's drug policy is outdated. It's humiliating for the players that get caught. And I think that it's going to be updated in 2020 when the collective bargaining agreement is up, because this is the way the country is moving, and the NFL is the biggest sports league in the world. And if they can go and have a sensible cannabis program, I think the rest of the country will follow, and they can show that guys went to college, went to high school, achieved at the highest level, and they're medicating it and they're using cannabis in a responsible way.
Okay. And Riley, please.
So the NHL drug policy is a little bit different than the NFL's, obviously, where it's a little more lenient, where they turn a blind eye to THC use, and no one's been in the substance abuse program for just THC alone. So, for the players' perspective, it's certainly progressive, where they're not actually enforcing it. They're looking for performance-enhancing drugs. But the better play would be to not test for it at all, and to actually be promoting it through the medical staff of the team and the organizations and the leagues in a responsible way. These non-intoxicating cannabinoids like CBD and the rest of them have a huge place in sports. Pain management, just recovery, rest, sleep. And then the big one is the brain, protecting the brain, which is, there's more and more science coming out in that world. So to me, contact sports specifically, but, it shouldn't discriminate, whether you're a golfer or a football player, I think cannabis has its place.
So if you guys wouldn't mind real quick, just share a little bit about your story and your own journey, and then let's talk about your athletes for
Care.
Okay, all right, Marvin.
I got into the space about 5 years ago, and I didn't know anything about the plant. Did a deep dive into it, and once I was hearing about the medicinal benefits of this plant, I realized that we had been lied to for 80-something years. The reason why it was put on Schedule 1, there's a couple of reasons. One of them was through racism, one of them was through Nixon trying to go after the counterculture people of the 1970s. And there wasn't that many guys when I got in, and so I've been speaking at these things for like 4 years, 5 years, and more guys are coming in, and I'm still doing the same thing, just trying to educate people, tell them like there's a natural alternative out there, get rid of your negative stereotypes and connotation, and to really take a look, follow the science about this plant.
Okay, thank you. Riley, please.
Yeah, so I retired in 2010 at the age of 20.
What sport? I'm sorry, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I was an NHL hockey player, and I retired at the age of 28 in 2010. I was actually a fighter. I've been over 250 hockey fights. So obviously it took its toll, but I also had a relationship with cannabis since I was 15 years old. So I knew that it was helping me in a therapeutic and, in some sort of medicinal manner. I wasn't really sure. It helped me with anxiety and sleep. But when I retired, I realized there was this whole other world of cannabinoids, the non-intoxicating ones, as I mentioned earlier, that, that opened up the door for using them for different purposes, different times of the day, and for different people. So I realized that that this was kind of my mission, that there was this whole other world, the science was kind of coming up to speed on the way I was feeling, so it kind of justified my belief system on cannabis. So it was easy for me to jump into it and support it in many different ways. I mean, we're just talking about the medicinal, but I'm into the industrial side of hemp as well. Just supporting the food, the nutritional profile, the hemp seed, and the fiber, and the bigger picture of cannabis. It's public health, it's environmental health, economic health. So.
Wow, and you mentioned something, you said you just learned. Thank you for that, because I'm learning too. I'm learning, so this is my first time.
Hemp, is what our Constitution was written on. Hemp was what, when you hear about John Paul Davy Jones and his Navy back in the 1800s, those were hemp boats and hemp ropes. So this country was founded on hemp. George Washington and all the founding fathers grew hemp, and we need to get back to that.
What I've learned is the Industrial Revolution's kind of suppressed cannabis, hemp, the whole bit, and in turn, public health is sacrificed. We have, chemicals everywhere. Everything is toxic. Our food system is toxic. Our medicine is toxic. So now we're coming full circle back to the hemp plant, and we're, through medicine, through the medicinal, the compounds in cannabis and hemp. But the bigger picture is changing the way we do industry, and removing the toxins and the chemicals that we're spraying on our crops, and getting back to natural fibers instead of synthetic fibers, and trying to. It has
no environmental footprint. Also,
exactly.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
But before we go, let's talk about Athletes for Care.
Athletes for Care is an organization for athletes that medicate with cannabis and want to educate the public about it. And athletes can come and learn about the plant. Athletes can come and get business advice and learn how to be in this industry. Athletes can come and not being taken advantage of. That was what one of the big thing is. So it's a collective, and we're a band of brothers that are really pushing this envelope forward as far as cannabis use with the various leagues, and also letting the public see that, you know, we're not Cheech and Chong. We're not tie-dye, you know, mostly we're suit and tie, and we're using the plant responsibly.
Yeah, sure. Above and beyond the education and advocacy, I would like to make it clear that we're not selfishly just about athletes. The research initiatives that we're engaging in and the community events that we do are really about using the sports platform to get the message out there to the masses. Because whether you're an athlete or not, pain is pain, inflammation is inflammation, you know, anxiety is anxiety, sleep issues are sleep issues. So it's just the recovery process transfers to the real world. So just using that platform to normalize cannabis.
Stay tuned for more of It's Janice, and we'll be right back. Hi everybody, and welcome to It's Janice with me, your host, Janice McLean-Deloach. We are at the Cannabis Science Conference East. I am joined with the CEO and founder, Joshua Grosny. Hi Joshua.
Hi Janice, it's great to be with you today.
Thank you for joining me today and for talking with me. I just want to first say, wow, this is an awesome conference that you have put together here.
It's so funny that Montel is also a former talk show host, and he's also from Baltimore. How weird is that? But I guess, Josh, you had the great mind to bring us together. Yeah, I love the work that he's doing, and it's sort of out of character for both Abby and me to be even in this world. Like, we sort of fell into this space because of my husband who passed away, Christian Evans. He was struggling throughout his life. He was bipolar. He suffered with chronic pain. He had lower back injury from a car accident. He had migraines 3 times a week. He was constantly searching to find care for himself, and he was searching about cannabis. He was bedbound a lot, and he was looking up CBD back in 2011 before Sanjay Gupta made his big announcement and anyone knew anything about Charlotte's Web. He was, really on a path to heal himself.
I really hope and pray that this group understands there are a lot of patients like me who are out here begging you to do more research, hoping that you do it, and I don't care if it comes back that I shouldn't be smoking more than something with 30% THC, and I'm fine with that. And you should be too. Not pushing people to get the 95% THC. I created my own line, which is called Montel. It's a line that has both THC and CBD products in it. All CBD, all hemp-based or marijuana-based terpenes in them. My edible products have some other plant-based terpenes in them, but specific terpenes that were formulated because they elicit the specific response. And over the course of the next year, I plan on expanding that entire line out.
Hi, I'm Montel Williams, and you're watching It's Janice.
And to find out more about what you're doing, where do they go?
They can go to montelwilliams.com.
It's at the Cannabis Science Conference. I'm not on any CBD oil or anything like that. I'm just really on a high because the people were cool, the interviews were good. Ricky Lake and Montel Williams were fabulous. Oh my gosh, thank you to Josh Grosny. Just like really, really good. So you guys have to go and check out the Cannabis Science Conference and just learn a little bit more about this industry and how it can benefit all people medically, and just to do your own homework and know what it's really about. I learned so much here, and so I hope that you did too. It has been my pleasure to bring this segment to you. Thank you for watching It's Janice with me, your host, Janice McLean-Deloach. Our shows are about small business entrepreneurship, innovation creation, and everything in the space of entrepreneurship. So when you're looking for the best resources and the most current events in those worlds, go to www.janice.media. All right, guys, see you next time.